want you to answer is, will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you apologize to them?
Of course. That was, we never want to release a single victim's name.
That is what they are hearing.
What happens when the government finally does what the people demanded and still manages to betray the very people it was supposed to protect? The Epstein files. For years, survivors waited, advocates fought, lawmakers pushed, and finally, Congress made it law. The president signed it. The Department of Justice had no choice but to comply. The files were coming out. This was supposed to be the moment of accountability, the moment the curtain finally got pulled back. But here's what actually happened. When the DOJ released those documents, they exposed the names of survivors, their sensitive personal information, their most private, most intimate images, released for the entire world to see. And while all of that was made public, while victims were being re-exposed and re-violated by the very system that was supposed to protect them, the names of the alleged perpetrators blacked out, redacted, hidden. Let that sink in for a moment. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now, into that environment walks Senator Patty Murray, and she brings one question. Not a complicated one, not a legal one, just a human one. Will you apologize to the survivors? And across the table sits Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, a man with the full weight of the United States Department of Justice behind him. A man who had every opportunity to simply say two words. I'm sorry, he explains. He provides context. He defends the department. But those three words, they never come. And Senator Murray, she does not move. She does not soften. She does not let it go. What you are about to watch is not a routine congressional hearing. It is not a procedural back and forth between politicians. This is a direct confrontation between power and accountability. And at the center of it all is a question that should have been the easiest one in the room to answer. Who is the Department of Justice actually here to protect?
This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well connected, you won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know us after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files. Your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos, while redacting names of alleged perpetrators of those crimes. The message that sends is this Department of Justice worked harder to protect the privacy of potential child abusers than the survivors. Your predecessor refused to apologize to those victims, but I want to give you the same opportunity to apologize for the way the department handled the release of these documents. Will you apologize to the survivors?
When the president passed the Epstein Transparency Act, that was the only time, when the president signed the Transparency Act, that was when we were legally allowed to release the files. Prior to the passage of the act, which you all passed, I agree.
That is not the question I'm asking.
It was the question you asked. You asked 5 or 6 questions. I'm answering them in order.
No,
that was one of the questions you asked.
The question I want you to answer is, will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you apologize to them? Of course.
That was, we never want to release a single victim's name.
That is what they are hearing.
But can I answer the question, please? Is
I'm
it fair?
asking if you'll apologize.
So I just said yes, but I would like an explanation to be given to that. What this act did is it required us to review over 6 million pieces of paper in a very short period of time. And so 0.001%, we made mistakes, and we owned up to them. And the second that a victim or their lawyer told us that we made a mistake, we pulled that document down, and we put lawyers 24/7 in being responsive to victims and their lawyers to make sure that we fixed every single problem. And so, yes,
I hear your anger.
I'm not angry. No, I'm not angry.
I hear
I'm just making sure it's understood that we matter.
There are nude photos released. I just want to hear you say, I apologize to those victims.
So as I just said, of course, any time we release a victim's name that shouldn't be released, we have failed as a Department of Justice. And so we have to do everything that we can to not fail.
Well,
And so
I haven't heard the words. I apologize.
I'm trying to give you an explanation of what happened. I don't think you're really interested in that because you keep on cutting me off.
But I have a few more questions here, and I want to know, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this, but I want to ask you, will you personally commit to meeting with the survivors? I have heard from them personally that DOJ refused to meet them, and I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the Justice Department reaching out to them to be heard, not waiting for them to navigate a legal system that has obviously repeatedly failed them so far.
Can I answer?
Yeah, will you reach out to them?
So, as we have said repeatedly, of course, any lawyer, now if a victim has a lawyer, I'm not allowed to reach out to the victim directly, you know that. But any lawyer can reach out to the Department of Justice. They have, and I've met with many victims and their lawyers, as has the FBI, as has the SDNY. We will always meet with victims' counsel. Any victim or their lawyer can come forward to the FBI
with these
at
women,
any time.
and I've met with them, and I know Senator Van Hollen has, and so many other. They are personally so feeling abused again and again and again by what happened to them originally, and now but what's happening by them. I am saying to you, as a human being, who don't make them navigate a system that is impossible to navigate, that's already abused them. Reach out and ask to meet with them.
You're asking me to call, you want me to personally call the victims? Is that what you're asking me to do?
I can help you reach them.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, because we have said from day one, of course, there have been members that have done that. And we immediately reach out to the victims or their lawyers when the lawyers want and say they want to do it.
We will follow up on that. Thank you very much.
Here's the thing that makes this moment even more significant. This is not the first time this question has been asked. The exact same question, the same survivors, the same demand for a simple human acknowledgement. It was put to former Attorney General Pam Bondi before Todd Blanche ever sat in that chair. And Bondi didn't apologize either. 2 attorneys general, 2 opportunities, same silence. So when Blanche sits down in front of Senator Murray, he isn't walking into unknown territory. He knows this question is coming. His predecessor faced it, and his predecessor chose deflection over accountability. Now it is his turn. Watch what happens next very carefully, because what Blanche does is not accidental. It is not nervousness. It is not confusion. It is a strategy, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Every single time Senator Murray asks for an apology, Blanche responds with context. Every single time she asks him to take responsibility, he gives her an explanation instead. He talks about the volume of documents. He talks about the timeline. He talks about the process. And every single time, Murray cuts through it and brings him straight back to the same point. That is not accountability. That is the appearance of accountability without any of the substance. What you are about to watch has a very specific name. It is called evasion. And it plays out not once, not twice, but 3 full rounds. The same move, the same redirect, the same non-answer dressed up in legal language and institutional defense. This is the anatomy of an evasion, and it tells you everything you need to know about where the priorities of this department actually lie. Let's talk about the scale of what happened here, because the DOJ didn't exactly operate with limited resources. More than 6 million pages reviewed, over 500 attorneys and trained reviewers involved in the process. This was not a small operation run out of a back office. This was a fully resourced, fully staffed effort by the most powerful law enforcement institution in the United States of America. And still, survivors' nude photos were published online. Their names were out in the open. Their social security numbers were visible to anyone who looked. The most sensitive, most personal information these women had, exposed. And the names of the alleged perpetrators, blacked out, protected, hidden behind thick layers of careful redaction. So let's be very clear about what this was. This was not a technical failure. You do not deploy 500 attorneys and 6 million pages of a review and then accidentally get your priorities backwards. This was a choice. Conscious or not, it was a choice. And the choice that was made protected the powerful and exposed the vulnerable. Murray asked for an apology 3 times. 3 times. And 3 times, Blanche handed her an explanation. Not remorse, not accountability. An explanation. As if the survivors needed a lesson in document processing. As if what those women were asking for was a breakdown of DOJ workflow. When the institutions built to deliver justice can no longer answer for their own failures, the people who suffer most are always the ones who trusted those institutions the most. And these survivors These women who came forward, who endured, who fought for years just to be acknowledged, they trusted the system, and the system exposed them. Again. Think about what this country represents. The United States, the most powerful nation on earth, the country that built its entire identity around the idea that no one is above the law, the birthplace of modern democracy, and yet a group of extraordinarily wealthy, extraordinarily well-connected men were able to cause catastrophic harm to dozens of children on a private island. And the government still cannot fully account for it. Still, in 2025. If the American justice system keeps shielding the powerful while stripping away the privacy and dignity of the vulnerable, what exactly separates this country from the systems it has spent decades criticizing? What is the moral argument? Where is the line? This is not the legacy that was built by the founders of this nation. It is not what generations of American soldiers, activists, and ordinary citizens sacrificed everything for. The promise of this country was equal justice, not justice for the connected, not protection for the wealthy, equal justice. And the question that sat at the center of that hearing room, the one Murray asked 3 times and never got answered, is not just about Jeffrey Epstein's victims. It is about every single person who has ever walked into a courtroom, filed a report, or placed their faith in this system believing it would protect them. Is the Department of Justice here to protect survivors or to protect the powerful? That question is still open, and it was open long before Senator Murray asked it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General Bondi, it's been reported that there were at one point 1,000 personnel assigned to the task of identifying and scrubbing Donald Trump's name from the Epstein files. Were those reports accurate?
I believe his name has appeared countless times in the documents that have been released. If I could finish, I'm going to read you the stats.
I just simply asked whether or not it was true that it was 1,000 folks who were assigned that task. Were those reports accurate?
There are more than 500 attorneys and reviewers. I cannot give you an exact number.
And I wanted to ask you about that also, because this is a different question that you're getting to now. There were 500 DOJ lawyers and others assigned the task of redacting the appropriate information, including identities of the Epstein victim survivors from the Epstein files prior to their release. 500, is that correct?
If I could have finished my answer, there were more than 500 attorneys and reviewers who assisted with the. They asked the question and they don't want an answer.
That answers my question, ma'am, and I'm going to move on. I'm going to move on.
From
General Bondi, would you agree?
The
time belongs to the gentleman from Georgia.
General Bondi, would you agree that your 8 years of service as the state of Florida's Attorney General, the 3rd largest state in the nation, served as an excellent preparation for your current role as Attorney General for the United States of America?
Not only that, I was a career prosecutor for 18 years.
And for
18 years.
And for 18 years,
he asked a question and doesn't want an answer. This is theatrics.
Well, no, for 18 years, you prosecuted serious felony cases, including drug cases, correct?
Oh, I prosecuted homicides. I prosecuted capital cases. I prosecuted domestic violence cases. I prosecuted multiple cases, and that's why I feel for all of these victims. And did you ask Merrick Garland this when you were sitting before him, sir?
You also prosecuted sexual assault cases and child sex trafficking cases, correct?
I answered that question earlier. I prosecuted multiple cases when I was a prosecutor.
Bottom line, you're an experienced and seasoned.
For 18 years.
Mr. Chairman, will you remind her of the rules? The time belongs to the member of the committee.
You are a seasoned and experienced prosecutor, correct?
I think we've established that.
Yes or no?
Does he want an answer or not?
I think he wants to say
no. I want a yes or no answer.
I think he wants to say
I want a yes or no answer, but I'll live with what you have already said. Let me ask you this question.
Clearly,
in
you
the
don't have any.
prosecution of sexual assault cases, you are acutely aware of how important it is to protect the identity of victims of sexual assault, correct?
I have addressed this multiple times. I think others were cutting me off when I was trying
Well,
to.
I just simply asked, are you aware of the fact that it's vitally important to protect the identity of sexual assault victims as you prosecute the people they accuse of assaulting them? Isn't that correct?
Excuse me. As we have said multiple times,
Protection of the
protection
identity
of all victims
of the victims
are
is
protected.
so very
You are
important.
protected under. Do you want me to answer or do you want to interrupt?
Well, because you're not answering the question. You do a Jekyll and Hyde kind of routine around here, and I just want you to answer my questions.
What does Jekyll and Hyde mean? Can
Well,
you
it
explain
means
that?
you're nice to the
Explain that.
Republicans and you turn like Hyde on Democrats. But let me ask you this, ma'am. We have the Epstein victim survivors here today. Representative Jayapal asked a simple question. If you would be so kind and honorable as to turn around and face them and apologize to them for outing them. I mean, how many lives have been derailed because your department was either sloppy and incompetent or willfully trying to intimidate and punish these ladies for
time is
coming
up.
forward?
Now enter Pam Bondi, former Attorney General, 18 years as a prosecutor. That is what she wanted the room to know. That is the credential she leaned on when the pressure came. 18 years in courtrooms, 18 years handling cases, 18 years, she said, working alongside victims of sexual assault. She said she understood victims. She said it like it was a shield, like the resume alone was supposed to answer the question, like the biography was supposed to substitute for the accountability. But here's the thing about saying you understand victims. It means nothing, absolutely nothing, if your actions tell a completely different story. You do not get credit for understanding survivors in a speech while your department exposes their most private images to the public. You do not get to invoke your prosecutorial career as a defense when the very people you claim to have spent decades protecting are sitting in that room, watching you refuse to look them in the eye and apologize. Bondi had 18 years of experience. She had the language. She had the background. She knew exactly what survivors go through, or at least she knew exactly what to say to make it sound like she did. And still, no apology. That gap between what a person claims to stand for and what they actually do when accountability arrives, that gap is where the real story lives. And in that hearing room, with survivors present, that gap was impossible to ignore. Nude photos were released, names were exposed, social security numbers were visible, and the names of the people allegedly responsible for all of it protected. One question was asked, not a complicated question, not a trick, just 3 words. Will you apologize? It was asked of 2 attorneys general, 2 of the most powerful law enforcement officials in the United States, 2 people who stood before Congress, invoked their experience, defended their institutions, and spoke at length about their commitment to justice. And neither one of them said yes. That is where we are. That is the reality of what this hearing produced. Not closure, not accountability, not even the basic human dignity of an acknowledgement. Just 2 non-answers dressed up in legal language delivered to survivors who have already waited far too long. This is a profound failure, not just a procedural one, not just a bureaucratic one, a moral one, a failure that cuts directly against the founding values of this country, against everything that generations of Americans poured their lives into building and defending. The people who built this nation, who fought for it, who sacrificed for it, they did not do that so that the powerful could be shielded while the vulnerable were exposed on a government website. And here is what makes it even harder to accept. This is the United States of America. This is a country whose intelligence and law enforcement reach extends to every corner of the globe. A country that dedicates enormous resources to pursuing justice wherever it needs to go. And yet, when the question is about accountability within its own borders, within its own institutions, within its own Department of Justice, suddenly the answer becomes elusive. Suddenly the explanation replaces the apology. Suddenly the system that can do so much cannot manage to say 2 simple words to the people it failed. The American justice system owes those survivors an answer, not a process, not a timeline, not a memo about document review, an answer, a real one. This hearing did not deliver that. It opened the wound and left it open. And the question that Murray asked, or that Johnson asked, that survivors have been waiting to hear answered, it is still sitting there, unanswered in the middle of the room. So we'll ask you, what do you think about all of this? Because this is not just about one hearing. It is not just about one department. It is about what kind of justice system this country is actually willing to be. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story matters to you, make sure you share it, because the people in that room deserve to know that the rest of us are still watching. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to the Demain Fact.